I'm David Sable. I'm here in Tribeca for New York Festival, Creativity from the Other Side. We're going to meet my dear friend Nili Lotan, one of the top women's designers in the world, who's going to speak to us about creativity, what inspires her, what motivates her, and how she has taken everything that has happened in her life and turned it into creative output, becoming one of the top women's designers in the world. Come with me. Nili, thank you so much.
Of course.
And it's wonderful to be here. So thank you for letting me impose our friendship and get you to do this interview. So let's talk about where you came from. You were born in Israel.
You
come from
Israel,
Netanya.
First generation, in a small town near the beach, a beach town called Netanya, about 20 minutes from Tel Aviv. I grew up with a beautiful childhood at a town where between 2 to 4 everybody is taking a nap. At age 18, I went to the army.
Like all Israelis,
like all
you
Israelis
went into the
do.
army.
It's mandatory.
But you went into the Air Force.
I went into the Air Force. At first, they actually test you and to see what can you contribute to the army at the age 18.
So you weren't designing uniforms yet for the
Not
Israel.
yet, but I was put in a position of kind of, in a way, leading all the girls in my unit, which was quite overwhelming at the age 18 to be told that now you're in charge of your peers. And the worst was that every night I was supposed to go from one room to another and make sure that there are no boys in the room. Now, I was dying to be in the room with them and those boys, but I had to be the one kicking out all the boys. That's what they gave me, and that's what I did very quickly. I mean, first I was stationed near home. And I think this is all important because we're talking about what is the ingredients that make me who I am today. Quite a lot of this comes from, you know, the places that I've seen, the challenges that I had to resolve when I was at a younger age. After 2 years in the army, I enrolled to Shenkar College, which is the only fashion school in Israel. And I actually enrolled to the very, very first year where this was recognized as an academic institute. Prior to that, my father would not let me go there. I mean, his aspiration was that I will become either, obviously, a lawyer or an accountant or anything along these lines of a good Jewish girl.
And today you're kind of all of those things
he would
together
be very
with
proud,
together with
very
being a
proud.
designer. We'll talk about
yeah.
that.
And I always say, I think the biggest challenge or the biggest responsibility that we have as a parents is to identify the talents of our kids and help them and lead them, you know, to the point where they feel it themselves. So I think my mom did the greatest service to me by identifying that my talent, my ability to draw, my attraction to beauty and to architecture from a very young age to music is where my future lays. During this time of school, I was 21 years old. I got married to a pilot in the Israeli Air Force. When he finished his military service, and I exactly that month finished my school, his dream was to study in the US. He was already 23 or 24, which very old, and he didn't want to go through the process of going to school in Israel with 18 years old or 20 years old. So we came here. And that's where my fashion career took off. Basically, I had 4 jobs in my entire 23 years before I started this business. I think this is something that doesn't exist these days. People come in to do it a year, 2 years, it's already like, I need to get out of here, I need to get another experience. I'm not getting the best out of myself, and they're moving. I had paid my dues in every company that I worked for. I worked for 6 years. I studied it, I learned everything that I could from one place. I gave my talent and moved to the next one. Right.
So each job that you had was a different learning experience that you were able to apply to the next job and the next job and build your creativity from the bottom up.
That's correct. I even, you know, when I describe that part of my career, I always say that from every company that I've been, I took something. And I wouldn't mention name, but some of them I learned everything what not to do. So I think from learning what not to do and learning what to do, It all summed up to myself being ready to do my own.
And so you worked for a couple of different fashion
Firms.
houses, more fast fashion, more sort of mass,
Right.
and then you went to Ralph Lauren.
This was the most wholesome experience for me as a designer, as a creative person, because a lot of companies, even in the fashion industry, forgot that there is a creativity behind the process. The one thing that I took from working at Ralph, the importance in creativity of one voice. I think that when, I compared it to any other company that I worked for, when there were teams of people, and I'm pro teams, but when it comes to a decision, it has to be one person's decision.
So let's talk about Nili Lotan's voice.
Okay.
How would you define your one voice?
So, first let me say that it took me 10 years to define my voice within practicing my own business. The reason why I started my business is to define my own voice. Because till that point, I was basically attending to other people's vision, to other people's direction. When I was on my own and I was at the point where I said, okay, what makes me who I am? Is there any reason for me to have a line on my own? What am I bringing to the world that no one else did? So for 10 years, I created the language of Nili Lotan, of the brand. And after 10 years, I called Vogue and I called some other people and I said, okay, I'm here to announce this is what Nili Lotan is all about. And this is why it makes a reason to have it. And this is how it's different from anybody else.
So from a certain point of view, you are becoming partners with the women who buy your
Right.
clothing in what the ultimate end result of the
Right.
creativity is.
Absolutely.
So you give them tools, you give them creative tools, as it were,
Right.
but they're the ones who have to take it and make it their own.
That's
Is that fair
correct.
to say?
That is absolutely correct. And I think as a result of that, I developed a brand that is constantly communicating with the followers, with the clients, whether it's my stores or whether the private people that buy from me. And thank God for social media, there is a direct communication between me and my clients. So I feed and basically being informed by what is it that they're telling me and how they're enjoying it, and there is a constant dialogue.
In our business, meaning again, advertising, marketing, etc., we talk about experimenting and labs, and we have media labs and social labs and all kinds of labs that we try to simulate or try to create things that might stick or might not. You have a lab. I find that to be so interesting. So you have a lab to talk about that.
Right. So in the fashion world, lab is called atelier, but I call it lab because really that's where I create. A sketch could stay a sketch on a piece of paper. So in order to create it and to become a three-dimensional garment, obviously you need a team of technical people. One of the things that I did from the very beginning is I created that lab, that atelier right next to me. Designers are being trained today to really put together technical packages, they call it. It's the drawing and the instruction. They send it overseas, and then you get back something, you fit it, you send it back and forth, back and forth. And I've worked like this for many years. I came to the conclusion that there is so much losing in the translation of different culture, of different perceptions, that I need the first prototype to create right next to me. The fact that it's right here, it allows me to maintain the idea and not waste time on airplanes and people who don't understand and you need to explain in long emails, and we have a direct communication and it's working.
So creativity comes in to your business decisions as well.
Absolutely.
That's something you talk about a lot.
Yeah.
So your business decisions, the way you look at the business, so it's not just the inspiration,
right.
the talking to people, the understanding, the cultural references, but it's also even into your business decisions.
Right. So this is something that I learned about myself, obviously having my own business, where I'm actually confronting most of the day with decision-taking one after the other. The creative process that I do now, it's something that's for my heart, and I love it, and I don't give up. I do it all day long. This is something that feeds me. So when I go into it with the understanding that I trust myself, that no matter what, I will get to the other side in one piece and healthy, and I go. And I use my creativity to take the decision. I don't have any business background. I'm purely design and art, and I'm running a pretty big business, and I'm still the sole owner of this business and take all the decisions. And with one thing is listening to my intuition, listen to my creativity. And it's quick. It's usually very quick because you go by your gut. And you're always true to yourself. You might not be absolutely true or successful, but you're always true to yourself. And to me, that's the key. When you're true to yourself, there's nothing to be afraid of.
And when you started, your very first mood board, and in our industry we know a lot about mood boards, your very first mood board was very military, even a pilot's jumpsuit, a flight suit on it. And yet, as you've progressed, today you've got young Mick Jagger sitting on your mood board. Right. So how do you find that inspiration? Where does that come from? How do you decide that this year's collection will feature, you'll be influenced by Mick Jagger versus the military?
So it's not one on the expense of the other. I think that the way the references that I'm using to inspire me is in me. It's memories, it's things that I've read, it's things that I've seen, it's feelings that I had. I am not looking at fashion shows and saying, oh, that looks cool, I'm going to do the same thing. It's really more about, and that all goes back to creating a one voice or a one theme of a brand. So when I started with the military and the flight suit. I once heard Annie Leibovitz talking at the Y, and someone asked her, what was the first photos that you took? How did you become such a great photographer? And her answer was, I took pictures of my mom and my dad. And that was many years ago. And in a way, I feel I did the same thing. I didn't go to my mom and dad, but I went to my whole world of where I came from, which obviously Israel has a huge impact on me, on my palette, on my creativity. So I went back to there and I said, I'm going to get out of that the strength and the creativity that I need. And I took one item, which was the flight suit of my ex-husband. And from that flight suit, I got out 2 jackets. Altogether, there was 5 pieces, 3 pants and 2 jackets from that same flight suit. I looked at the bottom of it, I came up with 3 pants, and then I looked at the top of it and I created 2 jackets. And that was my collection.
A true creative person's job is never done. Right. So creativity is always in beta. Right. It's never finished. And you live your life like that. You live your life always in beta, always thinking. Just share a little bit of that with us.
So yeah, the creativity is a blessing. I wish it to everyone. I think this is the most beautiful way to live a life because you're constantly renewing yourself and your thoughts. You let your mind go and create all these things, and then they happen. And there's nothing more satisfying than seeing something that you dreamed about happen. There's a sense of accomplishment. There's a sense of success. Sometimes I have nights that I don't sleep enough because I am so anxious to get up in the morning and to continue a process. I've had a period where I would wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning and I'm happy. I don't want to go back to sleep. I'm like, how fun. I can start now, continue what I did before. There's constant interest not in yourself, but in what you're currently involved with. So you're always looking forward for something. And it never ends. One of the things that I say about my process, which kind of explains this, I don't say that I design collections. I say that I design one collection. And I started it in 2013, and it's still going. It's not like I take different ideas or different inspiration every collection. It's the same ones. Right. That's what keeps it consistent. it's always the same reference. There's always Army in my collection. There's always Mick Jagger in my collection. There is always a Jean Birkin in my collection. There's always the beautiful colors of Israel, of the desert and the beach and the blue water. Everything that consists and who I am, it's in there. So it's one long creative process.
That's a great message for our creatives, because I think that sometimes in our business we think that we're only as good as what we did 10 seconds before, and 10 seconds later has to be completely different. And I love the notion of listening to your customers as you do, having the confidence to move forward, to believe in your own creativity and to believe in the people around you and to be able to do what you need to do, and the continuity of it all, to be inspired by who you are and what actually inspires you. Nili, thank you so much. You've been just a wonderful friend to us, but you've also inspired us. On behalf of New York Festival, I thank you for being part of Creator from the Other Side.
Thank you.